All right, let's get to pick six here because this is where Shadeur Sanders goes to the Las Vegas Raiders. And again, I think this is, once we see what happens in free agency, this might be more realistic where the Raiders are not on the outside looking in at the quarterback position when it comes to the draft. Shedeur to the Raiders. So DJ doesn't go with Shedeur at 3 to the Giants. Raiders at 6. What are your thoughts on this fit for Shedeur?
Yeah, well, obviously for the content, it's amazing. I mean, Shadeur Sanders, Deion
Yeah.
Sanders, Las Vegas, Chip Kelly, Tom Brady. I mean, everything is there for this to be like storylines upon storylines. That part is great, I think, for everybody. It's also kind of cool. I mean, the Raiders got kind of screwed for multiple years of trying to be, well, I don't even know they were trying to be disciplined. They were trying to go up and get a quarterback. They didn't get one. But a couple of years where they were in this range and ended up coming away without a quarterback. Now, like in this draft scenario, okay, trades aren't allowed, so maybe this just doesn't happen. But theoretically, they might have one fall to them without having to do anything crazy to get their quarterback. And I think Shador is a pretty good fit for Vegas. I mean, this is a team with a solid offensive line that can still tinker around, with that personnel. We still got free agency, still got the rest of the draft to go. There's definitely areas of that offensive line you could upgrade, but it's a pretty solid starting point. The receiving core is still a work in progress, but Jacoby Myers is a solid 2. Brock Bowers is a superstar at tight end. You can definitely stand to add more wide receiver talent. And I don't know if you can find a true number 1 anywhere, but the rest of the draft, again, like if you can come out of this draft with another receiver, a couple of offensive line depth pieces, and then basically the whole defense needs to be overhauled. But like that's a problem for another day, effectively. Like, will this team win a ton of games with Shadeur Sanders, the offense that he's able to create, and no defense? No, probably not. But will you feel a lot better about it if Shadeur looks good, the offense looks good, and now we have an offseason to work on a defense next year? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you're not drafting him for 1 year. This is the long-term play. I might be the one analyst that focuses on this more than anyone else, but is this a better fit just because it's a dome as well? The couple teams that we're talking about, the Browns, the Titans are fine, but the Browns and the Giants at 2 and 3, the questions about Shadeur's arm strength, I don't think it's a bad arm, so to speak, but I see the chat calling him Teddy Bridgewater 2.0. I don't think that's are there concerns enough about his arm that, look, Cleveland in New York are different. Swirling wind in New Jersey, Cleveland, you've got the lake effect stuff. That does matter. It does matter with arm strength stuff. Everybody's better, throws the ball better in a dome, but for Shedeur, does it matter a little bit more being indoors versus some of those rough outdoor climates?
I don't think his arm is a factor. Now, it's a world where, as you said, being in a dome is better than not being in a dome, right? So from that point of view, it's better for him to be playing in Vegas than it is in Cleveland, where there were multiple games a year where you're like, throw it out. This is ridiculous, right? Baker Mayfield has a strong arm. Baker Mayfield is on, the high end of the scale in terms of NFL arm strength. And there were multiple games in Baker Mayfield's seasons in Cleveland where you're like, this is a meaningless football game. You can't tell anything because of the weather, right? So from that perspective, yeah, his game would be impacted by playing in Cleveland. But like, to me, his arm is in the category of Joe Burrow's arm, where there was talk when Joe Burrow was coming out, like guaranteed cast iron number 1 overall draft pick, but you got to find something to bitch about because it's draft season, right? So there were people that were like, I don't know, Burrow's arm's kind of a noodle. It's not a good arm. I think there's a problem. Like, there were people bitching about Joe Burrow's arm strength as the number 1 overall pick, right? Has anybody ever criticized that in the NFL, right? Burrow's looked fantastic. His arm looks good.
Yes.
No problem.
Some bad football analysts still bring up his arm.
Right. My point is the Shedeur arm conversation, such as it is in that category, which is it's effectively irrelevant. He has a perfectly functional NFL caliber arm. It's not Josh Allen. It's not Justin Herbert. It's not even Baker Mayfield, but it is in the Joe Burrow category of like perfectly serviceable and not relevant to any football game he ever plays in.
I will say, like, I don't think Daniel Jones has a great arm, and I'm not saying he was a great quarterback either, but like his arm, there wasn't necessarily issues with him with the Giants. I think Eli had a pretty good arm, worked well there. It's just, it helps, right? It certainly helps with Josh Allen in Buffalo, and we've seen some games where other quarterbacks can't throw and having the extra velocity. does help.
Right, but that's like that's the counter fact. Like that's why having a special arm is still intriguing, right? It's not why having an average arm is a problem. Like most quarterbacks have some form of average arm, and those guys are all going to have games in Cleveland or Buffalo where this is not going to work, right? I literally watched from the stands Tom Brady playing a game in Buffalo where he couldn't complete a pass 10 yards in front of him to Randy Moss, right? To the greatest receiver that had played in his generation. Like sometimes you're going to get games where the weather is just not going to play ball. Now, Josh Allen might have been able to fire the ball through that like hurricane and actually complete passes. Most quarterbacks can't. And Shedeur will be in the category of the most quarterbacks that can't. But in a random normal game in September or December or November in Cleveland, I don't think it's an issue.
The Burrow arm thing is obnoxious because it does show up sometimes in QB rankings that I don't necessarily care about when people are ranking NFL quarterbacks. And it's like, oh, Herbert's better than Burrow because he's got more zip. And it's like, what are we doing here 5 years into their career? Why do we care about velocity? Like I see Joe Burrow throwing 25-yard handoffs helmet high on his receiver. It doesn't matter the RPMs. Once the RPMs do matter, it'll matter, right? Right now, it doesn't. At least not for Burrow. Brock Purdy's another interesting one. I don't think he's got a good arm. Certainly below, I think, the velocity average of the NFL, right. But he's accurate, right? And he gets it done. However, there are, games in Cleveland and, there are certain games where it might show up a little bit. So just something
those games, like the thing is, those games also affect the quarterbacks with good arms as well. Most of them, right? Right. The same game where Brock Purdy, or one of the games where Brock Purdy had trouble with the weather, Jordan Love also had trouble with the weather, and Jordan Love has a howitzer, right? It's a very, very unusual quarterback is the point I'm making, that has an arm and a grip and all those things that are so freaky that the bad weather games don't affect them, whereas they do affect the average armed and average tooled quarterback. So to me, yeah, Shadeur is not Josh Allen, right? He doesn't go in that category. But he is, Brock Purdy, Joe Burrow, in terms of arm strength, grip strength, all those things, the things that are going to be affected by the inclement weather affects most quarterbacks in the league.
Spending too much time in this. How much do you care that Shadeur's not throwing this week at the Combine? Put a percentage on it. What's your care level?
I mean, 0 point something. Like, it's not like he's the first quarterback that's not throwing the Combine. Is it annoying? Sure. Does it change anything? Not really.
Yeah, it's more fun to see the guys throw. I don't generally care. I think I came around to, like, if you're bad throwing at the Combine, like I think Luke Falk, remember a few years ago from Washington State, was visibly bad, like not reaching guys on deep outs. And look, I know you don't know the depth and receivers and everything's whatever. If you're visibly bad at the Combine, it kind of stands out. Joe Milton had the kind of like, I'm going to drop it in a bucket 60 yards down the field and kind of taunt and walk off. Like if you do something special on the other end, it might matter. I'm starting to believe that the Joe Milton walk-off deal where he's just like, boom, I'm awesome. I might buy into that a little bit. So if you're on like the extremes, I might care a little bit. But if you don't throw, I don't care that much.
No, I don't think it makes a difference.
You think I'm a sucker. No, I'm with you. I like the fit for Shadeur Sanders here. So it's a little bit of a curveball compared to some previous drafts. And I think a good outcome for the Raiders to be able to get a future quarterback. And like you said, got to spend the next year building that defense, get probably one more weapon in there to complement Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and they're in good shape.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.